Welcome to another episode of Dad Up, everyone. Thank you guys very much for joining me. I have another phenomenal, I should say, guest instead of a guest on my show today because this amazing couple is doing some remarkable things, not only in their family with their kids and their grandkids, but also in their relationship. And I think it's very important for us to talk about our relationship as husband and wife and how important that is to the family culture, the family structure. So I was really excited that they agreed to graciously come on the show. My good friends, David and Julie Bulitt, have been welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank
Looking
you so
forward
much,
to it.
Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. As we discussed prior to us getting on, I'm excited for this conversation. I know there's a lot of things that a lot of different directions that we can really go into with this, with what you guys are doing. But I should preface this in telling my audience that we're going to get into this, but he's a divorce lawyer. He's a divorce attorney, and she's a therapist. She's a family therapist, and they've been doing that for a very long time, both of them. And so it's unique that we have a divorce lawyer and married to a family therapist. And you'd think that's the perfect, those are the perfect career paths for a couple to stay together. Those two career paths. So very, very cool. David and Julie, whoever wants to go and talk about it, but let's dive into a little bit of your guys' back history, kind of talk about how you guys met, and then your family. Obviously, this is a dad podcast, so I want to know about your family as well. So let's go into all that.
Sure. So we met at the University of Maryland. I like to say it was lust at first sight. Julie says it was love at first sight. And from there, I went off to law school, and she finished school, went to graduate school. We got married after I graduated because she wouldn't marry me until she knew I graduated law school.
Yep.
And so, and we have 4 daughters. Our first daughter was biological. We had difficulty getting pregnant. And so we adopted our second daughter independently. And then a couple of years later, we heard from that child's biological parents again that she was pregnant, and we adopted our third daughter. Oh, cool. And then a couple of years after that, we had a fourth daughter the old-fashioned way. So we have 4 girls. Julie, as you mentioned, is a therapist, and I'm a divorce lawyer. And we started. We spent a lot of time, obviously, raising those kids like you did with your boys. And that was a full-time job. And in addition to that full-time job, then we had our other full-time jobs, which are still what they are to a certain degree. But we were one day sitting around on the beach, having a drink late in the day. And I don't know how the conversation came up exactly, but we came to the conclusion that both of us deal with the same issues, the same problems, the same difficulties in relationships in our very diverse offices and from different places. And that sort of light bulb that went off that day gave rise to our writing our first book, The 5 Core Conversations for Couples, and has led to all of the rest of the work that we've done together, which is the second book that came out last year, and our podcast, and so forth. So that's a very truncated story from my perspective.
Yes, but I would like to add before we even talk further about that. Funny you should say that our 2 professions and how interesting it is that we came together. I always joke with people that he was so tired of fighting at the office that when he came home, he did whatever I wanted him. And that's what, like, no fighting, whatever you want. I just want peace. And that's one of the secrets of our relationship is he, wore him down at the office.
Well, yeah, it was time. It's like the dog that you're training.
Yeah.
When he comes in at 6 o'clock at night, all he wants to do is go to sleep.
Yes.
And that was me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you see what I mean? 2 perfectly aligned careers
Yes,
to cause
exactly.
a beautiful marriage that will last forever because he knows the ramifications if it doesn't, and she knows the ramifications if it doesn't. So they're going to be together forever, folks. That's just the bottom line.
We just celebrated 38 years.
Oh, wow. Congratulations on that.
Yes, thank you. And David jokes 17 of the best years of his life, which he jokes about that. And he actually needs to change the number because he's been telling that joke for a while. It's probably up to 20 of the best years of his life.
Yeah,
but the truth of the matter is marriage is hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's work.
It's work. And one of the things that we promote in the work that we work with couples, we do some coaching, and we're trying to get the word out that you can't go on autopilot. You can't go on cruise control.
Right.
Like you need to be paying attention to your relationship, to your partner every day.
Right.
Yeah.
And that the couples that feel like they can do autopilot kind of things end up in his office or in my office, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's funny. People ask me a lot, what's the main reason that people come to see you, that people want to get divorced, right? And everybody thinks the same things. Oh, they had money problems, they had sex problems, she cheated or he cheated, or a problem with a child, or whatever the case may be. But the reality is that the answer is none of the above. The answer is that people don't, as Julie said, don't pay attention to their marriage. And this sort of malaise creeps in. And I know from reading about you and listening to some of your shows, you are a busy, busy dad. You took care of your kids, you managed your family, but you had to do something else, or else you wouldn't still be with your wife.
Right.
Whereas the folks that are in my office, it's not that they're angry necessarily, right, at their spouse, but it's that time goes by and this malaise sort of creeps in. And so then when you talk about, okay, my boys are up and out now, what am I going to do? They look around and say, our kids are up and out, and I don't really have anything in common with
Right.
you anymore. Person that I'm looking at
Yeah.
the table.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And that is the majority of the people that come into
Yes,
David's
yes.
office. There are, there are people that definitely
Sure.
have had the other issues of infidelity, trust issues, safety issues, those kinds of things. And yeah, so it's just really about paying attention and also understanding that to be the best parents that you can be, you have to be okay with each other, because kids are super smart and they're really strategic. If there's cracks in the foundation, as you talked about before, they will find them and they will use that to their advantage. And it's really scary and hard for kids when parents aren't on the same page, when they don't feel safe,
Right.
and they don't have that trust.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's interesting what you said there, David, about people come into your office and it's not so much that they have they have, infidelity issues or financial issues. I have heard, and I forget what the statistic is, but I have heard that it's because parents are so consumed with their kids throughout their ages that they're growing up, that by the time they're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, they're out of the house and gone. Then the husband and the wife look at each other and go, who are you?
Yeah,
Right. Because they don't know who they are. And so they've essentially, it's not even so much the communication. It's really about, I've fallen out of love with this person because I don't know them anymore. And so how do I fix that? How do I repair that? Well, a lot of parents, a lot of couples that do get divorced don't know how to do that. And so they just think the best solution for them to go their separate ways. Hey, the kids are out of the house. I don't have to pay child support anymore. And we just go our separate ways. The bottom line though is, and it's something that Julie has talked about, bottom line is it is important for you as couples to take care of yourselves first before you take care of your kids. That's the bottom line. And I'll go a step further and say, as individuals, I coach a lot of dads through my program. I coach a lot of dads. And one of the things that I talk to them about is I say, look, you cannot provide be 100% dad and 100% husband to your family if you're not 100%. So you have to take care of you first, then you and your wife, then you and your kids. So I tell a lot of dads that, listen, it comes down to your health. It comes down to the things that you're doing throughout the day. It comes down to any habits that you may have that you need to get rid of. I mean, those kind of things are the things you need to take care of, because if you're not doing it and you're checked out, meaning your tank is just empty by the time you get home, now you're irritable. Now you're grumpy, you had a bad day, you walk in the door, and guess what? House is a chaos. And what happens? Dad blows up, that causes mom to blow up. Now the kids are even more upset. It's just a complete, it's an angry circle, and it really leads couples down the wrong road.
Well, think about what they tell you when you're on a plane, right? When you get on the airplane and they tell you the oxygen mask drops down, you're supposed to, the adult gets the oxygen first before you give it to the child.
Right.
And it's the same type of analogy. You got to have that air, or that, in your case, that gas in your tank.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's true. And it's true, but people don't, often they don't do it purposefully, right?
Yeah.
Right. No.
They're managing their family. I can't tell you how many times folks have said to me, we were great partners. We managed, we raised our kids, but we weren't really partners in a romantic, in a connection, in a love kind of way.
Yeah.
And that's sort of similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things, we've done some corporate speaking, and we've talked a lot about, just kind of what we're talking about, like the needs. So sort of like, I don't know if you've ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it's sort of a pyramid with like basic needs, like food, water, shelter. Those things need to happen for people until they can move up to the next need, which is, you know, like love and belonging. And then at the very tippity top, it's sort of like community building and self-actualization, where you kind of feel confident in yourself. If you think about relationships, self is at the very bottom, and you have to be taking care of yourself before you can show up in a relationship with your husband, wife, partner. And then after the couples sort of section of the relationship, then together you can show up for your kids and your family. So if you kind of think about, you know, it's like a pyramid, and they build on each other.
Yeah.
And the other thing that sometimes I can't get people to understand the importance of self-care and couples care until I tell them that their kids are watching, and that you are role modeling for them. Do you want your kids to see you flying off the handle? Do you want your kids seeing you unhealthy, you know, smoking or drinking, or, you know, at a weight that you don't like? Is that something you want? Do you want to see your kids fighting? Do you want to see disrespect? Those kinds of things. So sometimes it's the modeling that will get people to kind of be like, oh yeah, you're right, this got to change.
So welcome to my world, Bryan. You just sat Psychology 101 class.
But you know what, Julie, you're absolutely right. And it doesn't matter on the age of the kids either. I mean, they could be young toddlers, and they still see what mom and dad are doing. I mean, when my boys were little, they wanted to emulate everything that I did, from the position. I have pictures when we went camping once. I wish I could grab it. I have a picture of us when we went camping once, and I'm sitting in a camping chair, and I had my leg crossed a certain way, and I had my arm a certain way. And my wife had taken a picture of it because both my boys were in two chairs next to me, and they were sitting the exact way. And I didn't have a clue that they were doing that. So those things happen. Yes, your kids are watching. And it's interesting. My wife and I, we have a marriage coach. We have a marriage therapist. She's a licensed therapist, just like you. And we call her our marriage coach. But we see her every other month. And we go and sit down with her for an hour and a half every other month. And I tell people, they go, oh, you got a therapist? Yeah, she's our coach, though. We don't go to her because we have problems. We go to her so we don't have problems. I ask them, so when you take your car to the mechanic shop, do you take it to get the general maintenance, or do you typically take it because you're so busy and when you start hearing a noise? Well, typically when I hear a noise. Well, I don't want that to happen in my marriage. So we go before we start to hear those noises, so that way we can make sure we're taking care of ourselves. But our boys know that. Our boys, we were very open with them. We said, look, we have our appointment. Her name's Karen. We have our appointment with Karen tonight. My boys know we go to a marriage coach. We sit down and talk with a marriage coach, and they see that. So now they know not only this is how you take care of a marriage, take care of a relationship, but this is how a husband treats his wife, and this is how a wife is to treat his husband. He treat her husband. So that is something that is ingrained in them now. And I want to bring up one other example before I let you guys chime in on that. But one of the things you talked about, kids seeing us, and we don't want our kids to grow up a certain way. My boys, I was in the Marine Corps. I grew up I spent 4 years in the Marines, and I like to joke, the three things that they taught us in the Marines was how to kill, how to cuss, and how to drink. And I was a drinker, and I enjoyed drinking alcohol. And my boys, I grew up in an alcoholic family. My boys started to grow up into a family, meaning their parents, meaning their dad, as a drinker. I didn't consider myself an alcoholic, although many people in my family will disagree with you. But I noticed one day I was sitting in the chair, I was watching TV. It was one evening, and I was relaxing. I had a beer, and I asked my son, I think he was about 9 or 10. I said, hey, bud, could you do me a favor and get me a beer out of the fridge? And he went, all right. And he stumbles over there, gets a beer out of the fridge, and brings it back to me. The second he handed it to me, it was like a brick hit me upside the head. What are you doing, you dummy? You're teaching your kids about alcohol by you letting them bring you alcohol and showing that it's okay. And I thought, I gotta make a change. And I talked to my wife. I said, look, I think I need to make a change. She goes, I've been wanting you to make a change. And I said, okay, well, I think it's time. And so I literally stopped cold turkey. And September 7th, so next week or the week after, will be 15 years completely sober. And I did that not for me, for my family. I didn't want my family growing up in that. My wife grew up in an alcoholic family. I didn't want my boys growing up in that. And to this day, my kids will tell me every year on my my sobriety birthday, they tell me,
Yeah,
thank you, Dad, for making that decision for us.
amazing.
And
That's amazing.
it's like what you said though. I tell you that example because it's like I didn't want them to grow up in that environment. Now they're in their 20s, right? They like to party, they like to go out and have fun with
Yeah,
at the
sure.
bars and all that stuff. They're going to do that stuff. But they also know, because I've had conversations with them, they also know, look, you have addiction in your
Yes.
genes, you have addiction in your blood, so you need to be aware of,
Absolutely.
and it's not just alcohol, it could be gambling, it could be other things, but you have it in yourself right now. So I want you to just be aware of that. And they go, oh yeah, we know. So we just, we keep an eye on it as parents, but
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's really good. And as you said, you didn't do it necessarily for you, but you did it for them. And sometimes you have to look past yourself, to kind of see, what to do. It doesn't really matter why you did it. You did it, and it was a good thing, and it sounds very positive for you.
No,
yeah.
and obviously there was your wife was seeing it, right? And it was clearly there was some stress that was being created there that you weren't all that cognizant of, because you
Right.
you didn't sense that it was an issue. And then but stepping up and doing it that way is out of the ordinary, to
Yeah.
say
Right.
to say the least. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
we all have struggles, as
Yeah.
part in our relationships, and Julie and I have had our share. And one of our which jeopardized us financially, which jeopardized us our relationship in a lot of different ways. With one child who had some very significant mental health, behavioral issues,
And addiction issues.
Addiction came later, but mental health, behavioral issues younger. So there was a lot of debate between the two of us about how she should be treated or not treated, or should she have medicine or not have medicine. And that led to spending money to try to get her in a better place. And so then financial issues came in part as a result of that. And that caused a lot of conflict for us. And it's not the same as what you're talking about in terms of, you recognize you had this issue, but there was clearly there was an issue that existed in your relationship that you figured out a way to solve it.
Yep.
And for us, to this day, I would tell you, if you asked us some questions about that time, we would still disagree about what we should or shouldn't have done in terms of, when we raised this child. And, so people need to understand, I think, especially when they're listening to your show or others like it, listening to you guys got it all together, right? Oh man, look at that guy.
Yeah.
Coach, Marine,
Yeah.
2 kids,
Good looking,
married, on and on. But the reality is that we all have those cracks that we have to tend to, those minefields that we have to be able to navigate.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we feel is really important about the work that we do is talking about it, because everybody has issues, and everybody else thinks that nobody else has issues. And I had a home office for years before the pandemic, and I told my clients, if I took you out this door and I went to all of the houses, in directly across the street and beside me, every single one of those folks had something going on. Infidelity, addiction issues, a child with special needs. Like, there was no family that was there that didn't have something. But we all feel like we're alone, in having difficulties. And we want to normalize that marriages take work.
Yeah.
And that because you have issues doesn't mean that you have to call it quits. Like, you need to lean in and work on things and repair things and say you're sorry. I'm sitting next to the best apologizer in the world.
Had a lot of practice.
Yeah.
A lot of practice. That's sort of the launch pad for the second book that we wrote, reluctantly for me, because I really didn't want to do another one. But we had this idea that again came to us, which is, how do couples who go through really difficult stuff, death of a child, addiction, adultery, whatever it may be, financial trauma, how do they get through those types of things? And better on the other side, when I make a joke, when some folks, because they had a bad weekend, they're in my office on a Tuesday, saying, I want to get out. What can we get from those folks? And the message, I think the overriding message is that people have to work at it. If you understand, right, intellectually, if you understand, there are going to be problems, just are. And if you know they're coming, the real skill is how to navigate them. And that's obviously something that you and your wife have learned to do.
Yeah. Well, don't get me wrong. We still have our little, our little
Sure.
issues. Every couple does, and that's completely normal. But in kind of carrying on what you were just saying there is that you have to work at it. The relationship with your spouse, you have to continue to work at. This is not just something where, okay, I got the ring on now, we're good, we're golden, and we can go about our business, take care of the family and do what we want. No, that's not how this works. It's no different than if you go to the gym, you want to get into shape, you go to the gym to work out. And I recommend a coach like a marriage coach, right? But you go to the gym to work out to get into shape. But the second you put the weights down and stop working out, guess what? Your body doesn't stay in shape. It starts to go downhill. Well, the same thing can happen in your marriage. The same thing can happen with the relationship with your kids. If you are not continuing to work on your relationship with your kids, even into their adult lives, if you're not continuing to work on that, it will continue to go downhill. So it's constant work. Is it fun? Not always. It's not always fun.
Right.
Sometimes there's things as couples that, my wife and I do that we know we have to do in order to make sure that things work. That we're not necessarily 100% in agreement on. Like you guys said, there's still issues that you guys probably still would disagree on to this day. But the fact is, our marriage coach likes to use the word differentiated. It's okay to have a difference of opinion. So if you have a difference of opinion and she has a difference of opinion, that's okay. Allow that person to be differentiated from you. Allow that. There's no reason for you to be upset with that. They're allowed to have their opinion, or they're allowed to have their expression, or whatever it is that they've got. So
we talk a lot about perspective taking, which is, I think, vital to any relationship, but the ability to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And if you can do that with your partner, that helps immensely. So if there's something that they did and you can understand why they did it versus being mad at them or being defensive, then it can really, change the course of how things work out. And I think David and I mean, don't get me wrong, we just went through a rough patch. Like a month ago, we just weren't connecting. We were kind of at each other, for a while. And David was like, I think you need some time to yourself. And I took a little bit of time to myself, but I said, more than time to myself, I think we need time together. And we did the lean in, right? Now, when things aren't going well, lots of times people, retreat to their corner. It's uncomfortable. We work a little bit longer. We go hang out with a friend. We go, do whatever, and we avoid the uncomfortableness. But what we actually did was we leaned in. And we sort of forced ourselves to work it out, talk about it. What is going on? Well, I was feeling a little bit this way, or I was feeling a little of that way. And some of the stuff had nothing to do with him and nothing to do with me. It was just like where we were. And we really, I think we're better now. Are we? We
did our own podcast episode.
See, you changed the subject.
She's talking. Well, no, she's talking about the second period of time we had some difficulty in the last 8 or 9 months. We had another period toward the end of last year that led us to do an episode in February, which I think we called "Will We Still Be Together Next Valentine's Day?" And we talked a lot about what was going on. And almost, we've had a lot of people who wrote to us, and it almost like they felt like they were sitting in a therapy session with the two of us. Because we were just,
I felt and you felt, and what I hear you say is blah, blah, blah. And, but anyway, just because I'm a therapist and he's a divorce lawyer doesn't mean we have all the answers. And we certainly have our difficulties. But I do joke that one of the things that really helped, the relationship was being intimate together. It greased the wheels. It was like a lubricant for the relationship. And I swear that I could, do or say anything after a few times of, in the bedroom.
Well, and the flip side of that joke is I when we talk to folks about, and we do some, like Julie said, some speaking with corporate folks and so forth, and the connection between home life and work life and the balance and all of that sort of thing. And I tell the story, if I was in a room with 1,000 people and all of them wanted a divorce, every single one of them I knew was on their way to get a divorce. And I said to them, how many of you are happy in your sex lives with your spouse? I guarantee you very few hands, if any, would go up. Now, that's not to say that's the most important thing by any stretch. And certainly in some relationships, it's not important for other reasons, whether it's health or whatever it might be. But for many of us, it is, it is a part of life, and it is a part of our relationship that gets different, as we know, as we get older.
Right. Yeah, but it is a connector.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And for you men out there, it doesn't always necessarily have to be sex. It could just be when we're talking about intimacy. Yeah, you have the sex part of it, but there are also other things. You have the, my wife likes the foot rub, those kinds of things. That's being affectionate. That's showing love. That's showing connection. One of the things that my wife and I do regularly, we don't do it all the time, but we do it regularly, is there's actually a game that we play. It was a card game. I literally bought it on Amazon, but it's a card game where it's questions. So we pick out a card out of the box, and it's just a random question. It could be anything. It could be something not very appropriate, or it could be something that's just off the wall, like, just anything. And we would ask those questions. Like, they would say, what do you think about this of me? And then it would be more, she would ask that question to me, and I'd have to respond what I think she would want or that she likes. And it's interesting because, that was fun. It wasn't necessarily sexual, but there was some intimacy to it because it was very personal. And it was just a fun
connecting time.
Yeah, it was a fun activity.
Yeah, intimacy can be going to church together. Intimacy can be being vulnerable, having a hard conversation.
Or you're laying down or sitting down and watching a show that you're streaming together that you both are enjoying, and having a cup of coffee or a drink or whatever it is you do. I mean, it can be any number, and it has to happen.
Oh yeah,
I think multiple times during the course of a day. It doesn't have to be planned. Julie and I now often work under the same roof with a great degree of regularity. I'm usually in one place and she's in another. So there's a lot more banging into each other than there used to be when I was going off to the office every day.
Yeah.
And in some ways it's hard, but for us, I think it's been great. I've enjoyed it for the most part. And so to me, seeing her, we got to have a cup of coffee. She's got 10 minutes because she has her next client's at 10. My next call is at 10, whatever it might be. We grab a cup of coffee, or we're out back with the dogs or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And that's intimacy.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's not planned.
Yeah.
But that's intimacy. And like you're talking about, we pick a card out of the game. We just talk about what's on the card. It's easy. You don't have to make a big thing, make a big production over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about another example, when we had the crazy pandemic and everything shut down, especially here in California, just everything was shut down. We couldn't go anywhere. My wife and I, we couldn't go anywhere. So we were in the house all the time together. And we used to go regularly, at least once a week, maybe twice a week. And we would just go for a drive. Now, we've lived in California our whole lives, so we know every ounce of California, right? But we would go, even if it was local, we would spend 2 or 3 hours in the car just driving around, just constantly driving. And what did that cause? That causes us to not only get out of the house, not be, stuck in the house, but it also caused us to be together by ourselves. And it caused us to talk. It caused us to chat. It caused us to just kind of hang out together.
That's brilliant.
Those were our date nights back then.
We did a similar thing where we would, on Saturday nights, if we weren't going any place,
which we weren't,
we still took showers, got dressed. Maybe we did DoorDash, had food delivered, or Julie made a little charcuterie platter, whatever the case may be. And we would sit around and we would just, as if we were, at our kitchen table or dining room table. Some nights we would get dressed up. We had a Western night, we had a 20s night, stuff like just to sort of stay connected in what was a very difficult and hopefully not repeated time for for all of us in this country during that period.
Yeah. And celebrations are really important with us. And we really try to, David's great with that. Like anything you can possibly celebrate. There's so many hard things in our lives that anything you can celebrate, you do it. So it's you need
to do that. You need
pandemic, you do a Western night. You just, we celebrated last night because we looked at our goals for the year that we made a year ago, and we achieved most of them.
Yeah, we do.
And we're like, okay, we're gonna celebrate that. We need to take a moment and say, hey, we're doing pretty good as a couple here.
Julie came up with a really annoying idea several years ago. It was annoying then, but now I'm glad she did it, which is we're going to do this goals journal, right? We're going to sit down every year on anniversary. What are our goals for the next year, whatever they may be? And some of them are those that we can achieve, and some of them might be ones that are more aspirational, whatever they may be. And then at the end of the year, we look at them. But during the course of the year, we look to see where we are. And I'm like, I don't want to write in a book, and
Yeah, but we've been doing it.
And what it does is it enables you to see what you've achieved, right? And we live so much this, especially in the world today, where things move so fast. What are we doing next? What are we doing tomorrow? What do we have? What's going on next week? Where's it? Hold on a second. What did we just finish that was terrific? What did we just accomplish that was really good? And it doesn't have to be saving $1 zillion. It could be we cleaned the garage that we've been talking about for 2 years.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, people should celebrate those little victories in life. And what does that do? It gets right back to what you were talking about a few minutes ago. It helps establish that intimacy and that connection.
No, absolutely. Small wins are important, whether you're an individual or a couple. Both of you, being individuals, should celebrate your own small wins in addition to you as couples celebrating the small wins that you guys have achieved as couples. I totally agree with that. It's something we are big fans of that as well, my wife and I. So that's awesome. I do want to ask you a quick question though, David. And maybe this has never happened. Maybe it has, but I'm dying to know, when you've had somebody come in your office and say, I want to divorce, my wife. All right, what's going on? He starts to tell you, and you, because of who you're married to, go, you're thinking to yourself, that's not really a big deal. Is there any counseling that you give that to try to encourage them not to get divorced and instead go, I have just the perfect person you guys need to see?
Well, I don't do that part because I don't want to get in bed that way.
Refer to me.
But she should answer the first part of that question, because she hears me talking to people now that we've been working under,
I hear him all the time. Well, say, what have you tried? Have you seen a therapist or a clergy person, or have you talked to a trusted friend? What have you worked on? And then he'll get off the call and he'll go, can you send me those, therapist number in DC or wherever? And he very much refers people back to trying to work it out.
I think sometimes, and it's probably why I don't make as much money as some people who do what I do, sometimes people come and it sounds simplistic, but it's kind of the grass is greener kind of idea, right? Grass is greener. We're fighting a lot. We're not getting along. Money's tight, blah, et cetera, et cetera. But when you start talking about, okay, well, what's it going to look like? What's it going to look like? You're not going to have your kids with you all the time. You're not going to have that person sharing with the carpools all the time, cleaning the kitchen, helping with the house. You're going to be supporting 2 households and not 1. Before you go to that side, and that's there, there's no escaping any of that. That is going to be there. There's going to be other stuff, better or worse. That's going to be there. Before you go there, is there any way to keep from crossing over that line? And I do talk to people a lot about, think it out before you decide you want to take that step, before you sign a paper hiring me to take you to that, from married land, to divorce world. I do. And, but I think it's important. I mean, to me, it's not just about the fight. You watch TV, you see divorce lawyers, you read stuff, whatever it is, but I've always approached it differently. That's not to say I don't do what I feel like I have to do once you're there, but I've always approached it and tried to approach it in more of a holistic-y, way. Not to mention, I've got her in my ear half the time. You
can do it. You can work it out. Just repair.
Yeah, no, I mean,
repair, don't despair. That's my
right. No, I'm proud of you for doing that, because it's so important. Like we talked about at the very beginning, like the family culture, the family structure of the relationship of the couple is and so important to maintain that solid foundation for your family, right? As I told you guys, the crack in the foundation, you don't want that crack there. So you have to work on that relationship. But you being, you make your money from people getting divorced. I mean, that's how you make your money. And so
What does
you're,
he say? He says the house that misery built.
Yeah, the house of misery.
We live in the house that misery built.
Yeah, yeah.
but again, yes, you have a job to do, David. I get that. You have a job to do, and this is your career. May not be the prettiest all the time, but at the end of the day, you could be changing lives for the better by encouraging them to take a different approach. You know how many people that I've talked to that are divorced from their spouses that say, yeah, she didn't want to go to therapy, or I didn't want to do that therapy thing. We just never did it. What, why?
I know.
It just doesn't seem right. Like, I don't need somebody telling me how to help my marriage. Well, okay. That's about the most ignorant, stupidest thing I've ever heard anybody say. So,
and then when people go on because they didn't fix what was going on with themselves in their first relationship, they go on to the second relationship, and
it's the same thing.
No, they're worse.
Yeah.
Second and third marriage, the rates go up.
Sure.
For divorce.
That's,
I mean, it's like, you know, somebody's if you're in a pond and you can't swim, you don't say, I don't want the life preserver because it's stupid. I should be able to get out myself, because you're going to drown without the life preserver.
Yeah.
Right.
So why wouldn't you say, okay, well, I've got this thing, this marriage thing. We've got this family thing. Why wouldn't we
at least try
grab on that life preserver and
Yeah.
see if it holds us up? Why wouldn't you try that?
Yeah. It's funny. I told one of my buddies, this is several years ago. He was like, yeah, we didn't do the therapy thing. I was like, I know marriage therapists. I can direct you to a few to at least give it a shot before you pull this trigger. And he's like, no, we're not doing that. It's not working. It's just done.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, but I don't understand why. And he said, because I don't need somebody telling me how to take care of my marriage. And I said, but let me ask you something. When you're sick, do you go to the doctor?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, well, yeah, I mean, and they give you like an antibiotic, or they tell you what you need to do to get better. Yeah. Okay. So why do you rely on the doctor then? Well, because he's the professional. He knows what he's doing. So does a therapist. They know what they're doing.
Well, my guess is, I don't know your buddy, but my guess is he's nervous. He's scared of what could come out of it. And to be honest with you, most of the time, a lot of the marital issues are due to triggers, triggering each other, right? And if you're not in touch with your triggers, if you can't say, oh, this happened to me when I was young, or this happened to me when I was in high school or whatever, and this is triggering me, then it's really hard to work through that, right?
Right.
So my guess is that your buddy was a little afraid of what might be underneath and what might come out. That's just my guess as a therapist.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's something that our marriage coaches talk to us about. There have been things that we have brought up in our discussions with her over the years that she's been like, okay, well, let me know about, like she said to me, like, Bryan, let me know about your parents. What, like, and I would tell her different things, and she'd go, okay, now I'm understanding why. She'd look at my wife and go, now I know why he's acting this way. I know why he's thinking. I'd be like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? She's like, you have stuff from your past that's still carrying now, even though you're in your 50s, it's still carrying now. Yep. And your wife has the same things. You guys have to figure those things out first and know how to fix those things in order for you guys to start working on each other. Yeah, that stuff continues.
Yeah. And you have to feel safe enough in the relationship to be able to talk about your triggers and to be able to say, hey, I'm being triggered, or I think this is going to trigger me. Can we come back to it, or can we talk about it later? Can I go work on this?
Well, you bring up a good point, Julie, because I want to ask you one real quick question. I know we're getting a little long here, but I want to ask you one last question. Something that I've learned through, the marriage coach that we go to is that it's okay when you're having trouble, when you're having issues, or maybe there's, like you said, a trigger. It's okay to put a pause on it. It's okay to say, hey, I need to step back here. And what happens a lot of times that I've seen, and my wife and I have done this in the past, we used to do this, but it was on my part mainly, but she would start to trigger me in some way. And I would say, okay, I can't do this right now. I need to step back. And she would say, oh, no, we need to handle this. Right. She would be like, no, we need to talk about this. Communication is important. We need to. And so what does that do? That causes me to get triggered even more. And so that happens, and that can cause more issues. It can really cause more damage. So
Yep.
our coach has said, listen, if one of you needs a break, take a break. If it's 5 minutes, if it's 10 minutes, if it's a half a day, that's fine. But you have to promise each other that you will come back to it. That is a must. You can't just let it go and then not fix it. So I want to get your opinion on that.
We have a saying, take 5 minutes, but not a week. Right. So anywhere in between that. But if you're dysregulated, you're not going to be able to think straight. You're not going to be able to have a conversation and process. So you have to get yourself regulated. Your emotions need to be regulated. And then you can come back to it. But I think that that's a great point, is that, you know, some people don't want to stop talking about it because they think it will just get swept under the rug and you won't deal with it. And we always hear you have to deal with your problems. Well, that's true. But sometimes you do need a minute, a pause.
Yeah.
No, I agree. So for my viewers, listeners out there, me directly to you, I am telling you that this podcast is a parenting podcast. But what we're talking about here is a relationship with the husband and wife, because that is so important for our family and our kids. As we talked about earlier, they see everything. They see how we act towards each other. Your kids are watching no matter what, how you react to your wife, how your wife reacts to you. They're seeing it all. My son right now, he and his girlfriend, they've been in a I say long term, it's been over a year, but I say long-term relationship. They're very cute. They're very loving to each other. They get along great. And the funny thing is, I have seen my son. He hasn't done it in my presence, but I've seen him on the security cameras. When they walk out to the car, he is always opening her door. And guess what? He didn't make that up on his own. He didn't make that up on his own. He's seen that from not only me, but he's seen that from other people in our family. So he's carrying that on. He may have saw it when he was 2 years old, 3 years old. I don't know. But he saw it, and it has continued on. Now he's 22, and that's how he treats his girl, because he knows it's important.
I'm gonna guess that he still sees it now.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I guess that he still sees it now.
Yeah.
And I do want to, I want to pile on to your point, which is that we raised 4 daughters. And what I know for sure is that those girls know how a man should treat a woman.
Right.
Because of their father, and the way that he loves me and respects me. They see it and they expect it in their relationships.
Exactly. They will absolutely expect it in their relationship. And you, Julie, are teaching them how a man is to be respected as well. I mean, I know you might slap David around a little bit. That's okay.
Just only when he deserves it.
Yeah,
no, but it's very true, as you know, because all of our kids are adults now. So we're seeing how things play out. And one of the things is that, you know, I know your podcast is specifically started with dads. One of the things that our oldest daughter said to David recently, which I will never forget, he won't either, which is, you know, Dad, no matter how busy you were when we were growing up, I never felt that you didn't have time to sit down to talk to me. And he just was present. Even if he was at work all day, he would come home and he would be very, very present. And I think that was such a gift, that she saw it that way, and that she felt that way with him.
That's awesome. Good job, David.
Well, thanks.
You did a good job.
Every time she says that, I kind of just get, goosebumps.
Yeah, but he did it. He did his job, and he did it well.
You should be given some kudos for that, man. That's a win. That's a win.
You know what? That's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, but most people, or a lot of people, don't.
You're supposed to, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll throw one more at you, and I'll let you guys go. So I tell people, like, I hear parents or dads say, listen, I know I have to do this with my wife. I know I got to do this with my kids, but I have to take my kid here. I'm burned out. I have to take him here. I have to do this with him. I have to do this with my wife. No. You don't have to do any of those things. You don't have to. You get to do those things. Those are things you get to do. So take it as a blessing. Don't take it as such a punishment. Why is it a punishment? Take it as a blessing. Yes, I get to take my wife to work every morning because she doesn't drive a car. I get to take her to work every morning. Is it the best time every single morning? No, it's not. But we are in the car together. I'm getting to spend more time with her before I drop her off. So yeah, I get to do those things. It's not a punishment. So stop treating it as a punishment. Kids are not a punishment. You raising your kids is not a punishment. Stop treating it like that. Your kids deserve better. And if they didn't, the Lord wouldn't have given them to you. He loaned
I love
those
that.
kids to you for you guys to raise. So treat it as that and let them grow up to where they need to be under God's watch. And you can say, God, how did I do? And he can look down at you and go, you did a great job. Just like he's going to do for David.
Yeah,
Hey guys,
exactly.
I love you guys. I appreciate you guys being on. For my listeners,
Great.
viewers,
No,
they
this
want to
was
look you
great.
up. Yeah, want to learn a little bit more about you. Best places for them to do that.
Yeah.
We're on, we have our website, www.thebullitts.com, and on all social media platforms at The Bullitts. Again, that's THEBULITTS.com. We have our podcast, Conversations for Couples, which we actually just kicked off early this year. And
Awesome.
we're on YouTube as well.
And maybe we can get Bryan and his wife
Yeah.
on. We
Yeah,
would
we
love
could.
to. Yeah.
I could
we'd
certainly
love to
do
get
that.
on.
I could
Yeah.
certainly
Awesome.
do that. I've had her, she and I have done a few episodes of my podcast together. She's not super big on, we were actually on another podcast together as well. So I know she's willing to, it's just not
Okay.
often that she does, but
We'll reach out. Yeah.
all right,
I'm going to
cool.
send you a note tonight and see if we can't set something up.
That'd be great.
All right. Awesome. Well,
Thank
thank you
you
guys
so
very
much.
much for being
Thanks,
on. You guys are
Bryan.
awesome. I appreciate it. Keep
Thank
doing
you.
what you
You
guys
are
are doing.
too.
You guys are doing a good job. And listen, folks, if you want to touch base with them, if you want to reach out to them, send them a DM. They respond to all their messages, unless you send them a weird message. They're not going to respond to that. But if you want to send them a message, ask them a question, a marriage question. I don't know, whatever it is, you can ask them and they will respond. And make sure you check out their website. Make sure you check out their podcast. I'll have all their links in my show notes below. So please make sure you do that. And as always, if you're not yet subscribed to my show, please make sure you do that so you don't miss any of the awesome guests that I have on each and every week, like David and his lovely wife, Julie. And as always, I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode of Dad Up. Wow, another amazing episode in the books. So much was shared, and I'm truly grateful my guest was able to pour into you to help you elevate your dad game and really dad up. Make sure you bang that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're here, please don't forget to leave me a rating and a review. I always appreciate the feedback. And one last thing, don't forget, your role as a dad is one of the most important roles you have. So if you need a little help or have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me on my website at daduptribe.com or at my Instagram page at daduppodcast. Until next time, everyone, Dad Up.